I want you to do something with me right now. Just swallow once, that is all. Go ahead, swallow. Now, while you are sitting there, notice what you feel at the very back of your throat. Is there something there? A little bit of thickness? A coating? Maybe a tickle that you just cannot seem to clear away, no matter how many times you have cleared your throat already this morning? Now, stay with me for a moment, because I want you to think about this honestly. You have probably been clearing your throat dozens of times a day, haven't you? Maybe even more than that. And if I asked you when this actually started, I do not think you could give me a straight answer. That is because it did not come crashing in all at once. It crept in on you, slowly, quietly, while you were busy with everything else. First, it was just in the mornings, when you first woke up. Then it started sticking around a little longer into the afternoon. And now, if we are being truthful, it is just part of your life. You do not leave the house without a bottle of water. You have learned to avoid certain foods, even though you are not always sure why. You have tried the lozenges, the teas, the honey, the little tricks your neighbors swore by, the things your relatives insisted would work. And yet, here you are. Still clearing, still swallowing, still feeling that same stubborn mucus sitting right at the back of your throat. Now I need you to hear me on this. That mucus is not random. It is not just something you have to accept because you are getting older. Your body does not do pointless things. Every single persistent symptom, especially one that has been hanging around this long, is your body's way of trying to tell you something specific. The trouble is, most of the time, nobody teaches you how to listen. And worse, sometimes people do not even bother to look. Well, that is exactly why I am here with you today. Because in my many years of working with folks between the ages of 60 and 80 in preventive health, I can tell you I have seen this problem, this persistent mucus at the back of the throat, misunderstood and mismanaged more than just about anything else. You get handed lozenges. You are told to drink more water. Sometimes you are brushed off entirely. And all the while, the actual reason, or more often, the combination of reasons, is sitting quietly underneath it all, never actually being addressed. So today, we are going to change that. I am going to walk you through, one by one, the 5 real, research-supported causes of persistent throat mucus in adults between 60 and 80 years old. But I am not going to stop there, because most videos on this topic never do this next part. I am also going to tell you which 2 of these 5 are almost certainly working together in your body right now, because more often than not, that is exactly the case. And I will tell you why that pairing makes this whole thing so much worse than it would be otherwise. My name is Dr. Adrian Wells. I work in preventive health and senior wellness, and my commitment to you has always been the same. No complicated medical jargon, no scare tactics, just plain talk, real science, and practical steps you can actually start using tonight in your own home. But before we go any further, I would like to know something from you. Is your throat mucus worse first thing in the morning, or does it stay with you pretty much all day long? Because that one simple answer tells me a great deal about what is likely driving this for you. So just drop morning, or drop all day, in the comments below. I read every single one of them. Now, before we get to those 5 causes, we have to start with a piece of basic biology that almost nobody has ever taken the time to explain to you. And once you understand it, everything else about this problem is going to make a whole lot more sense. Your body produces mucus every single minute of every single day, around the clock, whether you notice it or not. That is completely normal. That is completely healthy. You actually need it. Mucus is the protective coating that lines your airways from your nose all the way down into your lungs. It catches dust, it traps bacteria, it traps viruses, before any of those things can get deeper into your lungs and cause real trouble. It also keeps the delicate tissues of your throat soft, moist, and resilient. Without mucus, your airways would dry out, crack, and you would be vulnerable to every single thing you breathe in. So do not ever think of mucus as the enemy. It is not. The problem is not that you are making mucus. The problem is what happens to that mucus as we get older. There is a system in your body called mucociliary clearance. Let me explain that simply. The lining of your airways is covered with millions upon millions of microscopic, hair-like structures called cilia. These cilia are working constantly, every second of the day, without you ever having to think about it. Their job is to sweep mucus upward and outward in a wave-like motion, moving it along so it does not pool, so it does not accumulate, so it clears out of your throat, and you can either swallow it or cough it up without even noticing. In a younger adult, this system is remarkably efficient. Mucus is produced, it is swept clear almost immediately. It is a smooth, quiet process. But study after study has confirmed what many of you have already felt in your own bodies. As we age, those cilia slow down. They do not beat as quickly as they once did. They are not quite as coordinated as they used to be. And the consequence of that is simple. Mucus that would have been cleared away in a matter of seconds when you were 40 can now linger, pool, and accumulate for hours, sometimes much longer, when you are in your 60s, 70s, or 80s. Now, this is not me complaining about aging, and it is certainly not a reason to throw your hands up. It is just the physiology. But understanding this is the absolute foundation, because it means that any factor that nudges your body toward producing even a little bit more mucus than usual is going to hit you harder, and it is going to last much longer now than it ever would have 20 or 30 years ago. So with that in mind, let us get into the 5 specific causes. I want you to listen carefully, because I am going to tell you exactly how they work, and I am going to show you how they so often pile on top of one another. Cause number 1. This is the one I want you to pay the closest attention to, because in this age group, it is the most frequently missed explanation for persistent throat mucus, bar none. It is called laryngopharyngeal reflux. Now, I know that is a mouthful, so let me make it simple. Most people know heartburn, that burning, uncomfortable feeling right behind your breastbone after you have eaten a big, heavy meal. That is classic acid reflux. But there is another version of reflux, a much quieter, much sneakier version that produces no chest burning at all. You may have no heartburn, no indigestion, no obvious digestive complaints whatsoever. Instead, the only thing you have is a throat that just will not settle down. Here is what is actually happening. At the bottom of your esophagus, where it meets your stomach, there is a small but very important muscular valve. Its only job, day in and day out, is to stay tightly closed after you eat, so that the strong stomach acid stays locked down in your stomach, exactly where it belongs. As we get older, that valve, like so many other muscles in the body, can gradually lose some of its tone. It does not close as snugly as it once did. And when that happens, tiny amounts of stomach acid can sneak upward. Not just into the esophagus, but sometimes all the way up into the throat, up into the voice box, and occasionally even up into the back of your nose. Now, here is the biological key. The tissues lining your throat were never built to handle stomach acid. They are much more delicate than the lining of your esophagus. So the moment even the tiniest trace of that acid reaches your throat, your body does what it is designed to do. It rushes to produce thick, protective mucus to coat and shield that irritated tissue. That is a completely logical protective response. The problem is, when this is happening night after night while you are asleep, you wake up every single morning with that heavy, sticky coating feeling at the back of your throat, and you have absolutely no idea why, because you never felt any heartburn. The research in ear, nose, and throat literature is very clear about this. A large percentage of people with this silent form of reflux report no heartburn whatsoever. What they do report is chronic throat clearing, a voice that sounds gravelly or rough first thing in the morning, and that persistent mucus that seems to appear the moment they open their eyes. So ask yourself honestly, is your throat much worse when you first wake up compared to later in the day? Does it seem to get worse when you bend forward or when you lie down? Has your voice changed even slightly in the mornings? These are the fingerprints of silent reflux. Now, one more thing about this cause that is especially important for many of you. If you are regularly taking anti-inflammatory medications for joint pain, things like ibuprofen, naproxen, or similar drugs, the peer-reviewed research is very consistent. That class of medications reduces the natural protective lining of your stomach. That makes reflux, including this silent kind, much more likely to happen, or much more likely to worsen if it is already there. If that describes you, please keep that in mind. Cause number 2. This one tends to fly under the radar because it is so quiet. When people think of sinus problems, they picture the full-blown sinus infection, intense facial pressure, pounding headache, completely blocked nose. But in many adults between 60 and 80, chronic sinus inflammation does not look like that at all. Breathing feels mostly okay. You do not have a terrible headache. But very slowly, your sinuses are producing just a little bit more mucus than normal, and that extra mucus is draining silently, steadily, down the back of your throat, hour after hour, all day long. This is called post-nasal drip, and a recent study actually found the average age of people presenting with this problem is 55, which puts so many of you squarely in the heart of this. Now, the frustrating part is, because it is so subtle, many people assume it must be allergies, and they start taking antihistamines from the pharmacy. I understand why. But here's the problem. Antihistamines may dry that mucus temporarily, but they do not fix the underlying inflammation inside your sinuses that is causing the overproduction in the first place. And what you are often left with is dried, thickened, sticky mucus stuck at the very back of your throat, which is usually even more irritating than what you started with. The approach with the most consistent research support is also one of the simplest and most affordable. Regular nasal rinsing with a warm saline solution. A 2025 clinical review, published in the journal Medicina, looked across a wide body of evidence and concluded that nasal irrigation is an effective, safe, and low-cost strategy for treating and preventing problems of the upper respiratory tract. It is widely recommended as an adjunctive treatment by ear, nose, and throat specialists around the world. Why does it work? Because high-volume saline rinses physically wash out that inflammatory mucus. They help reduce swelling of the nasal lining, and most importantly, they help support that mucociliary clearance system we talked about earlier, the very system that is naturally slowed down as we have gotten older. But the word that matters most here is consistency. One rinse gives you a day or two of mild relief. Daily, proper rinsing, done week after week, is what produces the meaningful, cumulative improvement. Cause number 3. This is the one that genuinely surprises people because it is hiding in plain sight. I am talking about your medications. The very medications you have been taking faithfully every single day for months or even years are simply not something most people think to question when it comes to throat mucus. There is a class of blood pressure medication called ACE inhibitors, that is angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitors. These are prescribed to millions of people. They are effective, they are important, and for many people they are absolutely necessary. But they come with a well-recognized class-wide side effect that the research documents clearly. What happens is, these medications allow a substance called bradykinin to build up in your body. And in a meaningful percentage of people, somewhere between 5 and 20% of users, that buildup causes persistent throat irritation and a constant, nagging urge to clear your throat. Now, this is not an allergy. This is not something strange happening to you. It is simply the way that medication works, and your throat happens to be sensitive to that effect. The reason this gets missed so often is the timing. This side effect does not usually show up the next day. It can take weeks or even months after starting the medication for it to develop. So if you started a new blood pressure pill 8 months ago and your throat started bothering you about 6 months ago, you may have never connected those two dots. But that exact timeline is the pattern described in the research. In fact, a very large study of more than 27,000 patients found that adults over the age of 65 had 53% higher odds of experiencing this particular throat side effect compared to younger adults. So this is especially relevant for all of us in this age group. Now, if you are taking a blood pressure medication and you are not sure whether it is an ACE inhibitor, your pharmacist can tell you that in less than a minute. And importantly, there are alternative classes, ARBs, angiotensin receptor blockers, that control blood pressure just as effectively, but do not carry this particular side effect. That is a conversation worth having with your prescribing doctor. Cause number 4. Now, this one may seem obvious at first glance, but please do not dismiss it, because the physiology is important. It is hydration. Your mucus is mostly water. Its consistency, whether it is thin and slippery and easy to move, or thick, sticky, and stubborn, is directly tied to your hydration status. It is really that simple. Think of it like this. Fresh maple syrup pours easily. Maple syrup that has been left sitting out, exposed, becomes thick and sluggish. Same substance, completely different behavior, all because of water content. Your mucus behaves exactly the same way. But here is the aging-related wrinkle that makes this so much more important for those of us between 60 and 80. The thirst mechanism, your body's natural early warning system that tells you, drink now, becomes significantly less reliable as we get older. A younger person feels thirsty well before they become meaningfully dehydrated. An older adult, on the other hand, can be dehydrated enough to noticeably thicken your mucus, enough to affect your comfort, enough to make your throat miserable, without actually feeling very thirsty at all. So if you are waiting until you feel thirsty to drink, you are almost certainly running behind, day after day, and that mild chronic dehydration is quietly keeping your mucus thick, sticky, and much harder for those already slowed down cilia to clear. Cause number 5. This is the final one, and it is the one that is still talked about far too little. For a meaningful number of older adults struggling with persistent throat mucus, the root of the problem is not actually in your throat, it is not in your sinuses, and it is not in your stomach. It is in your gut. Now, I know that might sound like a stretch at first, but the research is very clear on this. Your digestive tract and your respiratory system are intimately connected through what is called the gut-lung axis. Through immune pathways, through nervous system signaling, what is happening in your gut can directly influence how inflamed, how reactive, and yes, how much mucus your airways produce. When the balance of your gut microbiome, that is the trillions of bacteria living in your intestines, becomes disrupted, a state called dysbiosis, it can trigger immune responses that promote excess mucus production in the airways. Not because there is something wrong with your throat, but because your gut is sending inflammatory signals and your respiratory system is responding to them. This is not just a theory. Multiple peer-reviewed studies, published in respected journals like the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine and the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology, have confirmed this connection. And in animal studies, when researchers transplanted gut microbiomes from people with chronic lung conditions into mice, those mice developed measurably increased airway mucus production. That is a direct demonstration of cause and effect. Now, what tends to disrupt the gut microbiome in adults between 60 and 80? It is not mysterious. It is usually a diet that is lower in fiber than it should be, repeated courses of antibiotics over the years, higher sugar intake, and chronic stress that has built up over time. These are the everyday realities for so many of us, and you will not fix this with a throat lozenge. But you can begin, slowly and consistently, to support your gut microbiome with daily habits, and over time, that can help calm those airway signals. Now, before I give you the full action plan, I need to pause for something that is genuinely important. For the vast majority of people, the mucus we have been talking about today is benign. It is exactly what I have just laid out. It is manageable, it is addressable, and it is not dangerous. But sometimes your body uses a symptom to point you towards something that needs to be looked at by a professional, not something you should just try to manage on your own. So please, do not delay. Make an appointment with your own doctor if you notice any of the following. If your mucus is consistently tinged with blood, even a tiny amount, that is not something to watch. If you are having increasing difficulty swallowing that seems to be getting worse over time. If you have had unexplained weight loss alongside this throat problem. If you can feel a lump or persistent swelling in your neck. Or if you have a significant, persistent change in your voice that is not improving. These are the things that go well beyond the conversation we are having today, so please bring them to your doctor's attention. Now, with all of that said, let us get to what you have been waiting for, the action plan. Because everything we have just covered means nothing if we do not translate it into something you can actually do, starting tonight. So listen closely. First, tonight, stop eating at least 3 full hours before you lie down to go to sleep. When you eat and then immediately recline, your stomach is still working, and that valve we talked about, the one that is already a little weaker with age, has its hardest time staying closed. 3 hours of staying upright after your last meal is one of the most evidence-supported simple things you can do to reduce nighttime silent reflux. Second, elevate the head of your bed slightly. But do not do this by piling extra pillows under your head, because all that does is bend your neck awkwardly and does not actually fix the angle. Instead, put a firm wedge under the mattress at the head of the bed, or place something solid under the legs at the headboard end. Even a modest incline, just a few centimeters, uses gravity to your advantage, and can meaningfully reduce how much acid can travel upward toward your throat while you are sleeping. Third, tonight before bed, drink a full glass of warm water. That is it. This simple step helps support your hydration overnight and helps keep your mucus thinner so that you are less likely to wake up with that heavy coating. Fourth, first thing tomorrow morning, before your coffee, before your breakfast, drink 1 to 2 full glasses of plain warm water. I cannot overstate how powerful this one habit can be. It immediately begins rehydrating you. It helps loosen that overnight accumulation of mucus. And for many of you, it will change the way your morning feels more than almost anything else you try. It costs nothing, and it is easy. Fifth, this week, go to your pharmacy and get yourself a nasal rinsing device. A neti pot or a squeeze bottle style irrigator, either is fine. When you use water that has been boiled and then cooled to a comfortably warm temperature. Do not use straight tap water. Add a small pinch of plain salt, and optionally, a very tiny pinch of bicarbonate of soda, which can sometimes help thin the mucus a little more. Use it once a day, preferably in the morning. Give this a full 2 weeks of consistent daily use before you decide whether it is helping or not. Consistency is the difference between "it did nothing" and "I cannot believe the difference this made." Sixth, make a specific appointment with your doctor to review your medication list with your throat symptoms in mind. Do not just mention your throat generally. Come prepared. Write down the timeline. When did your throat symptoms actually start? When was the last time you started or changed any medication? Lay that chronology out. If you are taking a blood pressure medication, ask directly, is this an ACE inhibitor? And if it is, ask whether an ARB alternative might be a reasonable option for you given your symptoms. That conversation is well worth having. Seventh, begin supporting your gut-airway connection gently, day by day. Add 1 small serving of a fermented food to your daily routine. That could be plain yogurt with live active cultures, a small glass of kefir, or a small portion of kimchi or sauerkraut. You do not need to overhaul your entire diet overnight. Just one small, consistent addition. This is a long game, not an overnight fix, but it is the kind of long game that can actually shift your baseline over time. Eighth, get intentional about hydration. Set simple reminders if you need to. Keep water within easy reach in every room you spend time in. And remember, water-rich whole foods count too. Soups, cucumbers, watermelon, herbal teas, all of that adds up. Your goal is not to gulp gallons once. It is steady, consistent intake throughout the day. Now, before I finish, let me say a quick word about a few of those popular home remedies that I know many of you have already tried. Honey is genuinely soothing for irritated throat tissue. It is safe. It can calm things temporarily, so there is no harm in it. But it does not address any of the 5 causes we have talked about today. As for dairy, the science does not support the idea that dairy creates mucus from nothing. But I will tell you, some people do notice a sensation of increased thickness when they have dairy. If you have noticed that pattern yourself, a short 2 to 3 week trial of reducing it is reasonable, just to see how your own body responds. Now, apple cider vinegar, that is one I want you to be cautious with. If silent reflux is even part of your picture, adding extra acid to your system can absolutely aggravate things, not help them. So please be careful with that one. Now, I want you to leave here with this understanding. That persistent mucus coating the back of your throat is not something you have to just accept. It has a reason. Actually, it has up to 5 reasons. And as I told you at the beginning, the 2 that are almost certainly working together in your body right now, more often than not, are cause number 1, that silent laryngopharyngeal reflux, and cause number 4, that chronic low-level dehydration you do not even feel. Why do those 2 stack so powerfully? Because silent reflux is constantly irritating your throat, so your body is constantly trying to protect it by producing more mucus. At the same time, if you are mildly dehydrated day after day, which is so common in our age group because of that blunted thirst mechanism, that mucus becomes thick, sticky, and nearly impossible for those already slowed down cilia to clear. So you have more mucus being produced and less ability to clear it. That is the vicious cycle that explains why this feels so stubborn and why it has been so hard to shake no matter what you have tried. But here is the good news. Once you see that cycle, you can start breaking it immediately, starting tonight, with the very first steps of that action plan. None of this requires you to accept that this is just getting older. What you are dealing with is specific, identifiable, and addressable physiology. You are not imagining it. You are not overreacting. You are not stuck with it. So please, if this video has given you something useful today, do me a favor. Share it with one person you know, maybe a friend, maybe a spouse, maybe a sibling, who has been quietly clearing their throat for far too long, just like you have. That one share costs nothing, but it might be the first time they actually understand what is going on in their own body. And before you go, I would really like to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me which of those 5 causes surprised you the most, and how long you have actually been dealing with this. I read every single comment personally. If you have not already, please consider subscribing, because I have another video coming very soon that goes deep into the gut-lung connection we talked about today, and how it ties into so many of the chronic complaints I hear from folks in your age group. You will not want to miss that one. Until next time, this is Dr. Adrian Wells, reminding you to take care of yourself.